welcome everyone. I'm sure people will still be trickling in, so we'll just kind of talk for a minute and this about our session. I kind of went out of order already. Sorry, Marcie. Rebecca Strom. I teach math in Mankato area ABE. I teach both at the Lincoln Community Center and also on the college campus with working with the dev eds and kind of doing the supportive lab times with them.
And I'm Marcie Vaiphei, and I teach at the Hub Center. This is my 16th year with ABE, and primarily I've been doing math. I went back into ELL a little bit this year, but predominantly I've been doing math over the last few years. So nice to meet you all. Glad you can be with us today.
So just out of curiosity, since it's 2:01 and we want to give everyone a minute to join if they're getting out of class, if you want to chat in the chat box, do you want to, what level math you teach? And otherwise we can also unmute ourselves because this does seem to be a nice small group. But what are some levels of math everyone is teaching right now? Got some GED. Developmental, is that developmental education on the college campus, Cindy, right? If I remember correctly. A lot of GED, nice. My other question for you is what is your familiarity with working with Desmos? From I've never worked with it to I use it all the time, or I've heard of it, kind of what is your familiarity? So we have almost none, some mediums. Okay. Nice, professional development. My first exposure to it was often at like professional development conferences where teachers were using it. So where I'm totally a newbie at this is our first big project creating, and I've been stealing stuff, and Marcie and I have been collaborating to try to create something for you guys today that you could also explore, but also take to the classroom and use with your students. And we're coming from a very different perspective. Sometimes we're going to talk as we go through how Marcie and I would use these activities in different ways. So we're hoping to have a really broad activity and experience for you. So you've seen it, but never heard of it. Great. Okay, this sounds really good. Let's look at our objectives today. So Marcie, do you want to, looking at the different things we're going to walk through today?
So today we're going to explore the conceptual approach to proportional thinking. And we're going to do that as a Desmos learner. So we'll present the lesson to you as if you were our students and work through it. And then midway, we'll kind of stop in and give you the teacher viewpoint from the opposite side of Desmos. We are using a Dan Myers 3-act math activity called Nana's Lemonade. And then you're also going to explore some of the features that Desmos offers for students, like writing responses or filling in a table, drawing or sketching. There's a graphing activity and also a card sort. And then, as Rebecca said, both of us will be kind of bouncing back and forth, kind of talking about how we would use this on a multi-level opportunities in different kinds of classrooms, where Rebecca works mostly at the college with higher level students in GED level. I do a lot of level C. And so how I use it will be different than how Rebecca uses it. And if you're in a one-room schoolhouse versus a lab versus a leveled classroom, we're going to kind of propose all those options for you. So hopefully you'll be able to walk away with a tangible lesson you can use in your classroom for proportional thinking.
So as we're moving through, we're going to start by dropping a link in the box for you to join Desmos as a participant. We're going to do what Marcie mentioned, focus on that conceptual understanding of ratios and proportions. And we're going to interrupt a few times. We're going to try to breakout rooms if those work out as well. And then also take a time to show you the teacher view of Desmos, where I can see participants' activities and see where people are working. And we can actually look at some screens and share those with each other. So I'm going to drop this link in, oh, Patsy already did. Thank you, Patsy. In Desmos. And when you do that, you should see a screen that looks like this when you click on it. So this will open a new tab. So if we pull you back together, we may say, come back to Zoom so that we can share my screen. But from right now, you're going to be leaving our screens and looking at your own. When you get there, hopefully you'll have the option. If you don't have a Desmos Activity account at all, you don't need one. You can actually continue without signing in. If you already have one, you can just click on join with your account. So if you don't, like I said, don't feel like you have to create an account or anything right now, you can just click continue without signing in. And we'll look at that from there. So step one is just to sign in. I'm curious, how's it going? Are people able to access that?
Yeah, there's several of them signing in right now.
That's great.
And I'm just going to interrupt. It looks like the one person needs to just put their name in the as a participant.
Oh, sure.
Whoever you are, our friend in Monticello, if you don't mind just changing your name so that we know who's here. Thank you so much. If you're not sure how to do that, I can certainly direct you as well. And then just let us know if you're having any trouble jumping into Desmos.
So one of the things we're going to have you do, so before we get started, has anyone done 3-act math before? Okay, and this is maybe a common one. Have you even heard of the Nana's Lemonade? Looks like we have a few people who have, some people who haven't, so that's great. So for those who are not familiar with 3-act math, it's doing I love that it's a wordless story problem essentially, where they're just observing it. There's no worksheet, there's no handout, no one's telling them what information to use. It's about the student discovering. So we're going to open this activity, and on your first screen, you are going to watch a less than 1 minute video, 48 seconds, and you're going to answer some what notice and wonder. So go ahead in your groups, or excuse me, go ahead and watch the first video.
Once you've finished watching, go ahead and put in your statements for what you notice or any questions that you might be wondering. And as soon as you answer that, you should start seeing responses from your classmates.
And if anyone is having any difficulty observing or getting into Desmos, please let us know. As a student, your screen will look a lot like this, or it will look like this. You've got the notice and wonder. And you'll be able to see each other's activities once you hit share. One thing I mentioned with my students, what I like about this, being able to share your answers, is sometimes in a real classroom, you really don't know what to think, and you hear the students around you talking, and that kind of helps you, oh, I never thought of that, and it inspires more thoughts and conversations. So reading other people's notice and wonders can actually help build your own curiosity about the problem.
Oh, I see a lot of responses in the notice and wonder boxes. I frequently do this activity with my level C learners, and I actually have a leveled classroom, so I have several people of the same level, and I use this as an introductory to proportional thinking. So we've already discussed ratios. We understand that they're comparisons, and then I bring them to this lesson the next day where we kind of start fresh with this lemonade and this notice and wonder. And then what I would do at this point is we would kind of just talk about what everybody is seeing, like what did you notice, what did you wonder, and kind of discuss that. So I think you can see some of your students or your classmates' responses here, and that maybe made you notice and wonder some other things also. I like the questions that are leading to how tart was his drink, will he be able to taste the lemon in his big gulp? How much more water does the second cup hold? Why did this person still only put one lemon in the second cup? Did the person not like the first drink? I love that one. My students always ask that. They think, what did he not like the lemonade? A lot of them want to say, why didn't he put sugar in it? How can he handle drinking this without the sugar? Is that why they made a second cup bigger? Is because he didn't like it? Why did he use a little glass when he had a big glass? Why did he do two? Yeah. How strong do you want the lemon flavor? This is exactly where we kind of want to maneuver our students' thinking. I love that all of you did the same kinds of notice and wonder that our students would do. This is exactly what my level C students would do. And I like that even two responded. He said, proportion in making lemonade. Like you used a math word, proportion. Lots of my students won't use that word, but they definitely understand that there is something not right about these two glasses of lemonade. So this activity is actually generating that thought. You're already wondering, you're already noticing the tastes are going to be different in these two cups of lemonade. Great. Okay.
I'm just going to mention up from the teacher move, you can see in the teacher dashboard, my view. So if you come back to the Zoom meeting for a second, I can see all of the student responses, where you can see a few of them because I think of screen space, you're limited. And one thing that's really nice is I can hit anonymize, and then they change everybody's name to famous mathematicians. So now when you're reading them, you're not sure who's saying things in the class, which gives you that more confidence to say what your notice and wonders and what your other answers might be. Okay, go.
Yep, so now we're going to open up to slide 2, so you can move on to the next slide. And go ahead and put in your responses to this question.
So if you are watching this as a recording later, I'll try to share my screen from teacher view so that I'll keep it open. But if you're in the Desmos activity, feel free to keep exploring, and we'll just keep coming back and referencing it. So part of the 3-act math, the first act is kind of what do you notice, what do you what do you notice? What do you wonder? Gathering information, thinking about what types of things will be important. And that's kind of a nice part of the Act 1 and these 3-act maths. Also, I want to mention in the teacher view, Marcie has added these teacher moves. So there's a little blue box you can click on, and there's like notes and things to watch for, things to help encourage conversation, things to keep the conversation and the activities moving forward.
So several of you have responded now to the second slide, which is, if we want both lemon waters to taste the same, what information would be useful to know to determine how many lemon wedges should be put in the larger cup of water? And you can see other responses here. How much water does each glass hold? How much water was in the first glass? How much water is in the first glass, and how much water is in the second glass? So everybody is generating the same kinds of thought here. We need to know the volume of those glasses. And so we want students to be able to first recognize that there is lemonade making going on here. There's some kind of concoction between lemon and water. We want them to think about what the taste would be if we only put one piece of lemon in that huge glass. And now we're on slide 2, where we're going to kind of corral them into thinking that proportional thought, like if we wanted them to both taste the same, what would be needed? And as Rebecca pointed out earlier, it's kind of like that numberless word problem, where you're not giving them the numbers, you're making them generate thought behind what would be useful here. All right, so now we're going to open it up to slides 3 and 4.
And before I also want to point out, I'm going to keep pointing out the teacher features. If you notice on my slide, I can see there's still 1 student or participant in page 1, and there are 7 in the second one. And it's really helpful. I was doing a Desmos activity with my students today that I could see who was still stuck on a previous page. And so even though we're not in person, I was able to leave students working on a page that they were on. I had a student who was several pages back. So I had her share a screen with me to keep figuring out where the problem was, but other students were able to move forward. So I'm going to open up the next 2 slides. You'll also notice that I'm pacing this activity, which means I'm trying to keep everyone on the same page so we can have conversations. We're going to do a breakout room pretty soon so that hopefully you can work independently and have conversations. But the idea of keeping everyone on the same ideas, and you don't have students who flew ahead, that we can kind of at least make sure we're building that foundation. Once again, each page has teacher moves. So Marcie's put all these ideas in there to helping keep those conversations going with students for the ones who are not confident and not sure where to go from here. And just one more thing about 3-act math. One of the things I love about it is the students are actually coming up with the questions instead of being forced to have a story problem where they're being told what to figure out. They're often curious, they have buy-in because they want to know.
We almost have everybody there on slide 4 now, making some estimates. All right, so on slide 3, we were asking you to make a guess or an estimate about how many lemon wedges would need to go into the larger cup to make the lemonade taste the same as the smaller cup. And we gave you the measurement of the smaller cup there as 3/4 of a cup. And then in slide 4, we're asking you to estimate the volume of the larger cup. And you've put your guesses in there. Does anybody want to unmute and tell me, where does your idea come from? We're just good numeracy thinkers. We can,
or you can use the chat box.
Maybe you're doing the math in your head. I guarantee that most of my students that don't do the math in their head, they really have no idea how much water is in there, but they do make some guesses.
I just looked at how many of those little glasses would pour into the big one before it got full and estimated that way. It looked like about 6 to me.
Okay. Thank you, John, for sharing that.
Cindy, did you also want to share? I think I saw
Yeah,
you.
that's pretty much what I was gonna say too, that I just tried to guess how many of the little glasses would fit. And honestly, I didn't notice the measure on the next screen.
That's okay.
Looks like it was a few other people's strategies as well.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed in my classroom and over the years, and for our adults as well, that we don't estimate enough. We don't predict answers, and we don't step back and think, is that a reasonable number? And so I love having this conversation about with students, what's reasonable, what's too high, what's too low, what made you think of that? Because estimating is such an important and powerful part of the math.
And I really like that it almost, it doesn't have a lot of words, so people don't get hung up on the vocabulary. You're not getting hung up on the numbers if you have like a math phobia. When I've done this activity with my students, everybody can enter in here. Almost everybody has drank lemonade or had some kind of flavored water that they've made, and they can offer some kind of thought behind it. So everybody is coming in on the same playing field here and can contribute to the math that's going on. All right, the next step is that we're going to open up the next 4 slides, and how we're going to do this is we're going to put you in breakout rooms. So for slides 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, what we're going to do is we're going to allow you to start forming the patterns here. So, and you're going to be acting as a student. So you're going to be exploring the concept of lemon wedges to cups of water and what that relationship would look like. So as we move into Act 2, this is where strategies take place. So we have explored, we've developed some kind of conceptual thought behind making lemonade, and now we're going to actually move into visualizing that on paper. Whether we do that making a picture or creating a table or a graph, you're going to try multiple ways of representing your thought behind lemon wedges versus water. So I think somebody's putting you in breakout
Yep,
rooms.
we're going to do breakout rooms.
I'm ready. Just tell me how many minutes you'd like in there, you guys.
So we have 4 slides that we're working on. Should we do what do we,
like 8 minutes maybe?
yeah, I was going to say 8 minutes was the number I'm coming to.
Okay, here you go.
And yep. And
Hey, I wasn't sure if you guys wanted to go to rooms or what. You're muted, Marcie.
That's okay. I didn't think we were, but I'm gonna text Rebecca now. I just said I'm gonna let them play, so.
Yeah, I set it up so that you, Rebecca and Lindsay are each in a group. That does just leave
Oh.
3 people in, that only leaves 2 people in room 4. I don't know if you'd feel comfortable jumping back in just to make sure they're going.
I can
Elizabeth-
do that. I can see the teacher side too, so I'm watching them.
Okay, it's Elizabeth Bennett, whom I know, and then Allison, whom I don't know. And Elizabeth's, I'm sure, on it, but
I don't know.
You're-
Alice.
yeah, you can, as a co-host, you can jump around if you wanted to just jump in and see how they're doing. You certainly don't need to stay if they're on it. So
I asked them before I left. Let me see. Okay, so Zoom. Oh, Rebecca's coming out.
oh, okay. In that case, maybe stay.
If I wanted to go back in, where do I see that?
So under let's see, breakout
Are we- and-
rooms, do you have a icon at the bottom of your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Here we go.
If we
So,
pause the
Eliz-
recording, Patsy, and if you can see from my screen in the Zoom. So one of the nice the ideas is that I can see, or the teacher can see the students' drawings. We're able to see their card sort and see who got started and who didn't. Sorry, I'm looking at these. Okay, and so you're able to kind of see how things were going. As we're walking through, we can see responses. There's also a cool snapshot feature. So when you're looking at someone's response, there's a camera to the right. And if you take pictures of it, I took some pictures, then I could present, hey, everyone, let's talk about these answers that student came up with. They're completely anonymous, but you're able to share student work and get some conversations going and say, what do you think of this, and catching different things. So this is also another really cool way to get engagement between students who can't sit and talk to each other with each other's work. All right.
So, yeah, I agree with Lindsay. Like the visual concept here on slide 7, where you actually have to draw the pictures. I like how this lesson pulls back from the method. I have a lot of students who know how to solve a proportion by cross multiplying and dividing, and they've got the answer right now, but they have no idea what proportionality actually conceptually means. And when you're able to take several different ways of representing how that is working and seeing it visually, and then like Rebecca said, we could show those snapshots and say, what's different from this person's thinking to this person's thinking, and what are we seeing that's the same? And I really love that. So you got to experience multiple ways that methods or within Desmos to use, like using the sketch pad. You got to make a table. You got to type in your boxes. You got to do a card sort. Those are all features of Desmos. For the math part, you're developing that visual conceptual understanding of what you're doing with that unit ratio and developing that thought within the students as they move through these. So as we ended up on slide 9 there, and in slide 9, you had to justify your thinking, which we know is one of those math practices. So then I would hold it like a little discussion with my students and say, like just kind of honing in on different ways of justifying how you got to your reasoning, how you got to the 4 lemon wedges and for 3 cups of water. I like you even use some of the features of building the proportion mathematically. You found the little tools within Desmos. I like the whole, there are 4 equal cups. Yeah, there are 4 3/4 cups and 3 cups. And if 1 lemon wedge is required for 3/4 cups of water, then there are 4 3/4 cups of waters and 3 cups. And so that means you're going to need 4 lemon wedges. So I like the ability here that students can kind of articulate their thinking. They're showing what they're doing with that unit ratio. So now we're going to show you slide 10. Slide 10 is optional. And the reason why we put it as optional is because right now we're developing a conceptual understanding. So this might be something that we would use primarily with level C. But if you work in a one-room schoolhouse, or if you worked with GED learners, some students might be at the graphing level. And so we want to be able to allow that opportunity for students to also visually see this in a coordinate grid. So Lindsay is saying, just had a thought, you could actually do the same activity with the same format on paper. Yes, yes, and actually you could do this same activity in Google Slides also, because you can upload videos in there. So if Desmos is the problem, I think we had a conversation in our group that mobile devices are not friendly with Desmos activities because they're too small, but maybe it would work with a slide, or maybe it would work on paper, like for corrections. So
and that, Red's kind of what we took this 3-act math concept, which is usually in person on paper, and we tried to kind of mesh it with the distance learning experience as well. There is also well, we're going to show you at the end, you can print off the Desmos activity into a teacher guide. And for this one, it's a 16-page guide that has each slide and all the teacher moves. So you do have that paper idea of connecting things for those who can't have the technology in the classroom.
And Rebecca did link that in our response sheet that we'll give it to you at the end. There's a link to the teacher guide, so you could actually print these up as slides.
I did try this activity with my students, and I do have a level C classroom, and it was great to see background knowledge we know that even when we have a leveled classroom, it's a multi-level group, and some people had not a clue what to do with graph, and some people were able to graph this accurately. So it was a great extension of activity, but it also gave me a clear picture of no stress idea of what they do know without having all these options. So another extension you can do of this is, instead of having do every activity, is pick one of the 3 ways to solve, and they can jump between slides. And so we also know that students sometimes prefer choices, and then they have more confidence in a way that they feel comfortable.
So lots of you haven't jumped into slide 10. You can go ahead and jump into slide 10 and see what you think about the graph. If you want to play with that for a second, put in your labels for your X and Y axes. You are graphing a fraction, so how you choose to do that is up to you. That also leads to good discussion within your class with your students.
Once again, from the teacher's perspective, I can see in real time as participants are working on their graph, I can see what they're writing. There is an opportunity to click on someone's activity, and there's a chat box in the middle. So I'm going to leave some random feedback. I'm just going to write great start to whoever this is, just so you can practice. You can actually send feedback to individual students as they're working.
Right. So if you're doing this as kind of a silent activity or silent slides, you can help guide someone who might have made a mistake or is going outside the box and you want to pull them back in. That allows you to do that without calling them out in the middle of class. Nobody else sees the feedback but you and that student. Lindsay's brain is popping with lots of ideas in the chat box. Yeah, so you could use this with the flip grid or flip charts and prompts, and you can build on this with slope depending on where your students are at. Again, if your students are just refreshing, then you can use the whole lesson, or pick and choose. If you are developing conceptual understanding at a beginning level, like level C, you might only go through 9. You might not use 10, the graphing. My students don't know about the coordinate grid yet, so I wouldn't have used this activity with my level C students, but I definitely would with my GED students who have some concept of the coordinate grid. And if I wanted to lead them into new discussions about linear proportions, proportional thinking and linear functions. All right, go ahead, Rebecca.
Say one of the activities or differences Marcie and I had talked about is when I tried this activity with my students, I did it after we had already solved proportions. So it was more of kind of an assessment, to see how can they apply the idea of using a table and also solving proportions instead of just curious what they solved. So it can be used as an introductory, like let's build connections, or it can be kind of a summary of where are the ideas solid and where do we need extra practice.
So I'm going to open up slide 11 here, and this is just your reflection. So this is where I would have students kind of reflect on the concept. So I'm hoping here, oh, I see most of you are moving in, that's good.
That's one of my favorite features is you actually know where students are at. And once they log in, right now I have them anonymized for you, but when as a teacher, if I'm not sharing my screen, I take that off and I am able to see exactly who's on which page. You also, just to throw this out there, is a pause button, and you can see if I hit this, then everyone can't access their material, so they're forced to come back together. So it's a nice way you can actually freeze everybody's screens and get them to come back together for whatever activity or task or question that you want to ask them. Sorry, go ahead, Marcie.
Okay.
So I love being able to jump between the teacher and student view on my screen so that we can see how people are sharing. And once again, I always encourage my students, it's okay to type your thoughts and read each other's. And if it makes you think more, go ahead and go back and add different things. I appreciate that this kind of wait, quiet time can be really challenging in a webinar, but it's really important to us that you get to experience each slide as a participant. So we want to give you that time. So once again, if you're watching along, I hope that you're able to access the materials with the link. And if the link isn't working and there is a handout attached to this, a resource page, I should say, just give us an email and we can make sure you get one that works.
And I really like the feedback I'm seeing because this is exactly how our students are going to feel. Like it's really hard to graph 3/4 increments. You had to decide what you were going to do there. I was surprised that the big cup was only 3 cups of water. Yes, I will say that this this activity through Dan Myers using the 3/4 cup is actually a level D skill. Level C would still be working with integers. And so the 3/4 cup is a little bit challenging for them, but I always kind of refer them back to money. And if they can keep thinking that 3/4 is the same as 75 cents, it's easier for them to make those jumps by counting money. That would help them to be able to make those jumps. And also, we're not looking at the picture right now, but I did see one of the responses for the picture was to show that 3/4 and 3/4 was a 1.5, and that is an easier jump to make from 1.5 to 3 instead of doing the 3/4 to the net 1.5 to 225 to 3. So making those kind of connections is also strong numeracy within our students. We like to see all kinds of ways that they're developing that thought.
I totally agree about the money idea. And we did, when my students did this, we actually drew quarters. And so we said, well, if you had 3/4 and you had 3/4 more, and then people are often able to really connect that fraction work and not be so intimidated by it.
One of the responses is labeling took some thought. Did I want to know how many lemon wedges I needed for a given volume of water, or did I want to know how much water I needed for each lemon wedge? And that's a good question that's going to come up towards the end of the lesson, kind of as an extension thought, like, what if we flip that?
I like Lindsay's question. I agree with whoever Rene Descartes is. Skip counting by 3/4 gave me a little mental workout as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna open up the next slide here for us now. So we should be on slide 12. And for me, when I'm teaching level C now, this is where the conceptual part is really kind of where the rubber meets the road here, is in these next few slides. So they've just kind of explored and developed some thought behind this. And so now I'm going to bring in new math words, proportional. And I want them to kind of tell me what they already know about it. I'm building on prior knowledge here. And I'm also allowing for another kind of intelligence. So if they want to draw, they can draw out the definition, or they can write it out depending on what they're comfortable with.
It's fun to see. So we've got some people drawing, we've got some people having written responses.
You're all such good teachers.
Excellent participants too.
Yes.
I like reading things double or decrease at the same rate. So that word rate is incredibly important for this activity.
So these are the kinds of responses we're hoping our students come to, is that they can see that there's a pattern developing here. For every 1 lemon wedge, you need 3/4 cups of water. And they could build that extension there. 100 lemon wedges is like 100 times 3/4, or it's moving the same. Yes, 3/4, yes, 4/3. It means that you're multiplying. So you're drawing some connections now between that pattern and that movement. Things increase or decrease at the same rate. This is what we're hoping our students start seeing as they've been drawing. They've been building tables, they've matched the cards together. Even if they did the graphing, they're seeing this relationship between the in and the output, this unit rate of lemon wedges and water. Okay, so I'm going to also open up slide 13 here. Some of you are ready to move to the next one. So this is just where I would take time to really hone in on that pattern making. So if I'm doing level C students need to see that this is an increase, as you were saying in your responses. Like for every 3/4 cup of water, I should be seeing 1 lemon wedge. And then when I move and I add another 3/4 cup of water, that should increase another lemon wedge. And if I add another 3/4 cup of water, I should get another lemon wedge. And here's what is where I would make that connection between those combinations. So these are proportions. Each combination is a equal ratio to another one. And so when we build onto proportional thinking, I like to explain that we're really just taking 2 of these combinations out of the pattern. They're all based on the unit ratio, 3/4 cup of water to 1. And so whatever combination we make with that increase of each, we're always going to have an equivalent ratio. So taking 2 of those combinations out would be a proportional relationship.
And we had some good conversations in my breakout room too about different things. But one thing I think is a common is we often will think I'll just double both. And that feels pretty easy to do. And I had a student who just kept doubling everything. But the idea of adding a 3/4 to one column and adding a whole one to the other can be a real challenge because we don't understand that idea of we're adding the rate to both sides. So I feel like this can be a really good opportunity to dig into what that means, what that proportional idea is, that idea of what Marcie said about a unit rate. But that weird idea of adding different numbers to each column can be confusing unless you actually have that visual of, well, if I put in 1 lemon, I'm pouring in some more water, and then it makes a lot more sense.
I will also add that when I teach this to my level C students, I give them multiple examples of this. And a lot of them I pull back and I give integers. I don't give any more fractions. So at the end of this lesson, you'll see I included a couple extra graphs for examples. Like I would probably do quarters to dollars. For every 4 quarters, I have another $1. And if I have another 4 quarters, then I have $2. And if I have another 4 quarters, I have 3, something familiar for them. If I have 1 pack of gum, I get 5 sticks. If I have 2 packs of gum, I get 10 sticks. So just showing that that unit ratio continues to repeat over and over and over and over allows them to see this pattern making. So when you pull 2 of them out, you know that you have something that's equivalent because it was based on that unit ratio. You're so quiet. I feel like I forget what it's like to be in a webinar. Okay, so I'm going to open up the slide 14 here. This is an extension. And what we mean by an extension is for my level C students, I might not be actually setting these up in today's lesson. I might use this as tomorrow's lesson, but today might be just the exploration and seeing how the pattern is working. And then tomorrow I might do setting up the proportions. But if your students, if you're in a one-room school or one-room schoolhouse, or if you're working with GD students or people who are more familiar or you're reviewing, you can easily move into what does it mean to set up that proportion, to take these 2 equal ratios out and begin to set them up. What does that look like? So you can go ahead and use the sketch pad here to write it. We gave you what it looks like in words here. On the teacher side, there is teacher notes that guide you as you're working.
Another thing I've been working at challenging myself when I'm setting up proportions is to make sure I always have the phrase number of in front. I've seen a lot of PD sessions that we as math teachers tend to use W for water and like L for lemon wedges. And the problem is we're losing, oftentimes our students don't see that connection that we're talking about the number of things, and that a variable always stands for the number of something. So it can be really helpful to kind of keep that connection that we are comparing these numbers. So here we can see all the different ways people are writing. Some are drawing, some are using the text box. It's just kind of a nice way to see overall how students are handling these problems and what it means to them to be a proportion. Like I said, if this were an introductory one, then it's okay to just stop here. If it's a check-in to see if they know when to use a proportion, then it's nice to see them keep moving forward. Just gonna give everyone a couple more seconds to play with this. And we have a few more slides to go. So I did this activity with my students a while back, and it did take more than one class period. Our class periods are an hour and a half, but the stopping and working with things was a really great conversation. As you can imagine, working with many of our students, technology is either they're really great at it or they seem to struggle more. That seems to be more extreme levels. Pulling people back from the Desmos to the Google Meet, in my case, was also kind of a time killer to get students coming back together. But once they got used to it, now they've gotten really good about being able to click on their Desmos links, come back to the Google Meet to share ideas, and then go back to Desmos. But like I said, being able to pace their activity and also pause, like they're locked out and they can't use it. So then we can like take a break and make sure we're on the same page.
Also, I just want to throw in there that there is a calculator, a scientific calculator that can be added to this. We don't have it in here right now, but you could have, and there is an AB option to set up a fraction. So if you wanted to type out your fractions on the calculator, that is possible. So if you're at the GD level and you wanted to introduce the scientific calculator, that is an option in the building of your lessons. I wish there was a pause button for Jamboard.
Yeah, I do appreciate Jamboard. One thing I love about Jamboard again is that you can see who's on what page, because it's very taxing to keep telling someone, Marcie, we're on page 4. Join us on page 4, like to see where they're at.
It looks like everybody's put in their responses, so I'm going to open up Act 3 now. So Act 1, we've been through just exploring the concept without any numbers, building that notice and wonder. Act 2, we're building those strategies of how we take what we noticed and wondered and start putting it into picture form or tables or
gathering that data.
Yep, gathering that up. And now we're going to go to the reveal. So Act 3 is really just helping you confirm that you have the right answer.
So go ahead and watch your video. It's 23 seconds. I like the celebratory answer.
Yes. Yeah.
So once again, like this 3-act math is kind of a really nice way to do a story problem, but treat it. And I've told my students, this is a real life story problem. We are at the grocery store and you see a sale and you need to figure it out and you wonder if your coupon will work, or, you know, we have to notice, I wonder this, notice things, and we have to figure out what information is important to know. And then we have to go through the steps to build strategies to actually solve them. So as we're moving forward, we have a few extensions. I'm going to open up slide 16. And these are questions that, what would you do if you wanted to use an entire lemon? Now in reverse, how much water would you need? And we keep coming up with that. We want it to taste the same. So once again, if you wanted to know this, what would be important information to know? So go ahead and look at slide 16. And what do you need to know to figure out a lemon going backwards to figuring out how much water that might be? Exactly. We've been talking about this wedge, but the wedge was our unit before, and we don't really have a, like, how big a size was that? It wasn't relevant at the time. So now it suddenly is relevant. So once again, it's got us wondering how big was that wedge? How many lemon wedges are in a lemon? All of these things, how many equal pieces was it divided into? So now that we know what we need to, and I love that this guides us, like, I need to know this, now I know what information to look for, instead of reading a story problem, hunting for numbers. We're focused on the information that's important. So I'm going to open slide 17, and now they're offering us. So the 2-act is always that piece where we get the information that's necessary. So this picture is a picture of the graph. A picture of the lemon. And so using this, we can now create our own table. And on this table, it's left blank. Like, you have to create your own headings. You get to create your own axes. This isn't as structured for you. If you want to do lemon wedges on one side and cups of water on the other, or you can do it in reverse. So now the graphs may actually look different because you have more options. So I'm just going to open a couple more and let you play just a little bit longer. So slide 18 is continuing that idea of graphing. I'm going to open that one. And so I'm going to open through 18 and just give you a few minutes to play with these slides. So just feel free to chat. The other slide I didn't show you in the teacher move, if you're looking at my screen, is you click on summary and you can see the names of the participants and which slides they've been working on by the dots next to them. So I can see that we have some people who did click on the link but haven't actually worked through the slides, and they may be watching my slides, and that's fine. But as a teacher, it's going to be nice to know that a student maybe isn't in the activity at all or hasn't been. So on this activity, what do you think is going to change once you open up that they can create their own table with different headings and their own graph? How will that change things? And you can either unmute yourself or chat or type it in the chat box. What do you think? How will that change what you might expect from students?
They're busy playing. They're doing it.
See that? That's all right.
The tables and the responses.
Oh, so graph looks like slide 18 didn't allow graphing. There must be an issue with when we loaded it in. If 18 isn't graphing, I apologize. We'll have to figure out what we can do to fix that. I'm not sure why that would be. Yeah, as Cindy put in the chat box, you're going to see different interpretations. You might see the numbers they'll be the same, but they might look different. So it would be a great opportunity for snapshots of different students' work and conversations about how that can be. So as we're moving forward just a little, it's about 3:15. So just kind of summarizing the activity. As Marcie pointed out before, depending on where your students are at, starting with a fraction is probably not the first way most people would think to work with building proportions. So slides 19 and 20 were additional. So slide 18 was kind of the end of the water and the lemonade activity. She created a few extra slides at the end that could have been input or inserted in the middle just to build this idea of proportional reasoning. We left them at the end for optional ideas. And it was to think about the same idea using something that had integers. So like a pack of gum. So Wrigley's gum has 5 sticks of gum for every pack. And then giving students the ability to focus on building those tables. So you've got the table and they can look at what might need to be, how to fill in these missing pieces. So now the math is maybe won't be the barrier if they aren't familiar with fractions, they don't have that background experience with fractions. And instead they're working with numbers that are a little more user-friendly for different levels. So this activity, we were focused on trying to have a variety of activities that really highlighted what Desmos has to offer between graphing and card sorts, chat boxes, written responses, and the other things that I'm forgetting right this second, in addition to how we can build these things together, how we can multi-level this activity. So we are working, I know our classrooms, like I said before, even though I have a class that's a level C, I have a class that's Dev Ed Math, I have a class that's technically level D, but they tend to really be all over the board. My level D students sometimes cannot multiply, my level C sometimes know how to graph. And so having activities that is open-ended in that they can choose different levels or that they can explore different ideas, share their thinking and learn from each other really got me excited to explore more with Desmos.
And we really wanted to talk about the conceptual understanding because we find with a lot of our students, if they know any of it, it's generally that they know the method, but they don't really know where that came from or why it works that way or what does it really mean to be proportional. And so really developing that thought behind the unit ratio, building that pattern and being able to take out 2 of those combinations and identify them as equivalent because they're based on that unit ratio really helps them to kind of see the proportionality of that development. So just really building on that conceptual understanding for our students and making those connections.
And that when we learned, excuse me, through M&I, one of the things that was highlighted was the idea of levels of knowing math. And we know that students learn best if they have something concrete, which is what we are missing with this kind of activity, but the idea that they can draw it, that they can explain it, that they can build strategies, excuse me. And so I love that this conceptual understanding can come out through an activity that is online. And so we've got the distance learning classroom students, but this could also be done in an in-person classroom experience as well and still really build the deeper understanding of that conceptual understanding of proportions. So are there any questions about the proportions, about Desmos, about student work, about any of these things? Go ahead and you put them in the chat box or unmute yourself. But while you're doing that, I want to show one quick thing. And it is that Desmos has in their lesson, you can click on a teacher guide. And this is an example of this is the teacher guide, excuse me. So if I'm going to share my screen again, it's 16 pages. It has a checklist of things to think of. And this is created by Desmos. We did not create this, but it took what we created. And it's got a quick overview of all the slides so that you always remember what's coming next. It's got the printout of the teacher moves next to the slides and the sample responses. So you kind of can be prepared for what they might see. You can write your own notes, and this goes for every single slide in this activity. So when you're building these activities, it's also nice that if you are in a situation where you can't have electronics, you can make the graph paper for the activities. You can do a lot, but you can also have this for yourself. So it's quite an extensive teacher guide. Yeah, Lindsay, I didn't know this was there at first either. I just like, this is how I learn a lot of things. What does that teacher guide button mean? And I clicked on it and found it. So
That's what I was going to say. We tried to make this activity so that it's accessible to multiple levels and multiple places, like how much you can use this in your classroom. Like, do you have mobile friendly students or not? Or what level are they all at? But it's really just fun to explore it. There is a lot of activities in Desmos that you can beg, borrow, and steal and copy those and use them in your classroom. You can delete the slides you don't need and build off of what is already there. But it allows you to have a class like we did today where we're talking to you as you do the slides, or they could work independently as homework if you built in the directions there for them, and then you could still check in and see the results and their responses as you move along. So lots of different ways to use this activity: one room schoolhouse, leveled classes, or a review lab. You choose. Rebecca, were you going to show them live how to click on the teacher guide?
I can, yes. Let me quick grab. Sorry, I just realized. All right, so when you're in the Desmos activity, I go back up here. So this is what it looks like when you find it on Desmos, and the teacher guide is just right here on the right-hand side.
We still see the teacher guide.
Oh, I'm paused, sorry. Thank you. So when you're in Desmos, the activity, you'll see it looking like this. You get a quick overview of all the slides. And when you want to, if you're in Desmos, there's a lot that have been created by other teachers. So if you click on student preview, it gives you a quick overview of what the activity might look like. When you click here, it's teacher guide, and that's where it will create the guide for you. All right, are there any other questions? I'm gonna quick drop this resource guide in the chat box. It does have our email addresses on there. And I'm gonna make sure it's gonna get in just one sec.
Elizabeth is asking, where did you find these videos and how did you get them into your Desmos activity? So
Okay.
Dan Meyer's link we have in the Google Docs there for you to access it. So I know Elizabeth had said that a lot of her students are not mobile friendly, so the Desmos activity might not work for her, but you could access Dan Meyer's 3-Act Math with the videos by clicking the link in our resource guide. But Rebecca, you can tell them how you uploaded the.
So I was challenged to, I had a hard time getting, there's the Desmos, excuse me, the 3-Act Math links are out there everywhere. I know the videos are on websites all over the place. I could not get it to download on my computer, so I actually just did a screen recording of it and then uploaded that into Desmos.
And Cindy, we did share it with the activity with you in our doc that we put in the link in the chat box. So
I just dropped the link. And it should be all of the links. It'll have the activity, the link for what you did today, the student version and the teacher version. I dropped in a link. I can show this what it looks like over here real quick. We have 2 links for 3-Act Math at the bottom. One is Dan Meyer. His tasks are searchable by standard. They're CCSS Common Core, but since CCRS uses the same coding, if you're working on a lesson and you know you're using a certain standard, then you can simply just type in that standard and you will find something. If he has it, you'll be able to find it. Dan Meyer tends to be upper level. He has some 3rd to 5th grade, but majority of his is 6th through 12th grade tasks. If you've heard of Graham Fletcher, he's another amazing math professional development person. He also has a website, and his 3-Act Math tasks are geared at K through 5th grade level math.
So more level BC.
Yep. So when you click on them, what's really nice is you will see the tasks look like this, and you can search for a code, and then it'll bring you to the video. So the tasks are really, it's awesome that they took the time sort them by standard. And the same thing with Dan Meyer. He also has them listed by the standard code. So hope everyone is able to get that handout resource. I know that Lindsay also dropped a link for the survey. So if you fill out the survey on this session, then you will get the CEUs after that. Are there any other questions about both proportional understanding and also 3-Act Math and Desmos? Knowing that we're kind of newbies ourselves, but we're figuring it out. So feel free to totally unmute yourself. I know people have already started having to leave, but otherwise, thank you so much for coming. This has been great. It's been a definite challenge for us to be low key and calm, but it's been a great session.
Thank you so much. And if you wanna, can you just share the very end of your slide or slide presentation? I added a slide just about some upcoming professional development. Things to just keep on our radar as we are nearing the end of this year. But otherwise, yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Rebecca and Marcie, for putting this together. It's been awesome, and I am so excited to take this activity and tweak it and use it with my students. No, that's fine. I actually just added it. So
okay. So this, let me jump down.
There it is. So
there we go.
Yep. So you have the integrated education and training 101 webinar coming up on May 13th, which is just already next week, I believe. And then manufacturing careers networking webinar, May 19th. And then the writing single set of learning objectives coming up June 3rd. And then Summer Institute is right around the corner. So just keeping in mind, if there's anything that you want to submit as something you want to share, a strategy you've been using in your classroom, proposals are due May 31st. So yeah, I put the link to the eval, and that is how you'll get your CEUs. I put that link in the chat. Otherwise, we will see you around.